is Andy Campbell.
Hello.
Hi. My name is Andy Campbell, and welcome to the knock your socks off world of public speaking.
Are you afraid? I don't mean of me. I'm Tim, and I'm harmless. I mean, are you afraid of public speaking? Maybe you're confused, a little sleepy, cranky.
Well, if you bought this tape, you're expecting to someday find yourself in a situation where you have to get up and speak in front of a large crowd. And whether you need to give a classroom speech or the most important business presentation of your life, you've probably got a bunch of questions and concerns.
Maybe you're afraid you're gonna get up there and just blank out. Maybe you're afraid your speech will be all over the place.
When I was young, I used to go camping at Loon Mountain with my father. Now, a lot of people aren't a big fan of Christmas. You think that, Bono... But back to financial reform.
Or maybe you're afraid you'll be so nervous you just won't show up.
Well, in this program, we'll address all those concerns. We'll show you how to deliver your speech in style, how to organize your speech to a T, and how to combat that gut-wrenching stage fright you might be feeling. We'll talk about preparation, speech research, delivery, all the tools you need to get up there and speak like a pro. We're the Standard Deviants, and we've got you covered. So let's get down to business.
Part 1. Preparing to speak. Whether you're delivering a political campaign speech, a heartfelt eulogy, or a presentation to business associates,
you'll want to carefully prepare before you deliver a speech. Now, I know what you're thinking.
How can I prepare to give a speech when I'm paralyzed by mind-numbing fear and I can't get out of bed?
Well, we understand your nervousness. And it's important that you understand that the first step in preparing to give a speech or presentation is to conquer your fear of actually giving it. That's why you're going to want to pay close attention to the first section of this videotape.
Section A, Communication Apprehension.
Communication apprehension, commonly known as stage fright, often described as butterflies in the stomach. You know what we're talking about.
You get a letter in the mail. You're happy. Everyone likes mail. Why? It's from the local PTA. And they want you to give a speech on the merits of building a children's recreation center for your town. And why not? You've always been vocal on the matter of telling friends how badly the neighborhood kids need a place to play. This is your chance to make a difference. This is your chance to shine. But then, it hits you. That slight tickle of fear at the base of your spine. That cold trickle of sweat that rolls down your cheek. That energetic tap dancer who suddenly appears in your stomach to dance the first 2 acts of Showboat. It's communication apprehension. Other symptoms begin to creep up. You can't sleep. You can't eat. You begin to come up with excuses for why you can't possibly deliver that speech.
Maybe I should clean the garage next week. That place is so cluttered, I probably won't have time for anything else. Like, terrifying public speaking engagement.
Well, don't let communication apprehension stop you from speaking. It may seem like you're all alone or that this fear is ridiculous, but the truth is, communication apprehension is the most common fear in the world, even more common than the fear of death.
But the most important thing you need to remember is that communication apprehension is a fear that you can easily get a handle on.
A lot of people believe that CA is a learned response, that people's fear of public speaking is grounded in a bad public speaking experience. By that token, if people begin to have positive public speaking experiences, their fear should decrease.
I know what you're thinking. How does this help you in the short run? What can you do if you feel like you're about to implode right before a speech? Well, there are certain alternative methods.
We've all heard about the trick where you imagine your audience naked. This might work, but if you have an overactive imagination, you might mess up and imagine yourself naked.
The best way to combat the fear of public speaking is to learn how to relax yourself. Here's 4 easy steps that'll help you do just that.
Okay, you're nervous. What do you do? What do you do? Well, step number 1 is to admit to yourself that you're nervous. Acknowledge your fears, but also realize that you can overcome them. Just remind yourself that you have something valuable to say and that the audience isn't likely to be hostile toward you.
Step 2, think about what you're going to say and what effect you'll have on your audience. The more you think about your subject and your relationship with the audience, the less you'll think about your fear.
Step 3, act confident. Sure, you're nervous, but the audience doesn't have to know that. If you project confidence, the audience will react positively, and this will increase your confidence even more.
And finally, step 4, start strong and end strong. A strong introduction will propel you through the rest of your speech and wipe out any fear you begin with. Ending strong will also counteract a shaky beginning due to nervousness.
It might help you out to keep in mind that speaker apprehension isn't a sickness that needs to be cured. You're not going to erase the fear from your life. Chances are you'll always be a little bit afraid before you get up in front of a large crowd. We all are. The key is to learn to deal with your fear and control it, so that it doesn't control you. So the absolute best thing you can do is take a deep breath, recognize your fear for what it is, and write the best possible speech you can. Because preparation is the key to overcoming your public speaking woes. And, conveniently enough, preparation is what we're talking about next.
Section B, supporting material.
Whether your speech is persuasive or informative in nature, you'll be making some sort of point, offering some kind of opinion.
And in order to support that point or opinion, you'll need to organize some supporting material. You'll need to do a little research.
The goal of research is to gather supporting materials. These are factual materials and opinions that back up the main ideas of your speech.
Every type of support material projects your ideas in a slightly different way. By using all kinds of different support materials, you can increase an audience's interest in your speech. Just remember, for each type of support material you decide to use, ask yourself 4 important questions. Is this accurate? Is this specific? Is this clear to my audience? And most importantly, is this relevant? That in mind, let's take a look at some common types of supporting material.
Factual materials.
Factual materials can be broken down into 3 different categories. They are facts, definitions, and statistics.
Facts.
Facts are units of information that can be verified by independent observers. So if you were presenting an informative speech on television sitcoms of the 80s, a fact would be that the show Growing Pains had a character named Boner. That's a simple truth that can be verified.
Our neighborhood hasn't had a community recreation center since 1958. 1958.
Definitions.
There are 2 types of definitions for many words, denotative and connotative. A denotative definition is a literal definition, the kind you'll find in a dictionary. A connotative definition has to do with the emotional response that people have to a word.
Community. It's defined as a group that shares a location, a government, and a common cultural background. The key word there is share.
It's important to keep in mind that some words carry connotative meanings that may be negative. These words can work against the purpose of your speech.
We need to work together to build this center for our kids. We need a joint effort, like the communists.
Statistics.
Statistics stand right alongside facts and definitions as supporting material that can strengthen your speech.
Bluntly put, statistics deal with numbers. They're numerically formulated facts used to describe observations of size or frequency. Put that way, statistics sound about as exciting as going to a math party with Rain Man, but for your purposes, they can actually be pretty helpful. Statistics can help make quantitative comparisons, chart trends, suggest relationships, and summarize huge amounts of data.
So let's say you're persuading the town council to build a new community center. You might say,
There are over 3,000 recreational centers for children on the East Coast alone.
or maybe,
Statistics show that cities that have a children's recreation center have a 40% lower crime rate for juveniles than those that don't. Or even 4 out of 5 dentists surveyed recommend that kids chew Trident at recreational centers.
In any event, statistics really can help support the main ideas of your speech.
Examples.
Examples are another type of common supporting material for speeches. An example is a piece of information that's presented to the audience in order to clarify an idea or concept. Examples try to make a concept vivid and relevant to an audience. 2 important types of examples are specific instances and illustrations.
A specific instance is a fairly brief example. It's clear, it's short, and immediately illustrates a main point. You can use specific instances to support ideas that only require a brief reference to make your point immediately apparent. So suppose you were giving an informative speech whose specific purpose was to inform the audience on the dangers of mountain climbing. In that speech, you might make the claim, mountain climbing is dangerous for novices. A specific instance that supports your claim might sound something like this.
Dave Sturdivant, an inexperienced 28-year-old student, climbed Mount McKinley on August 28, 1993. He died that day of grappling hook injuries.
An illustration is an extended example. Usually it's told in narrative form, like a story. Basically, illustrations are more detailed than specific instances. You should use illustrations when you're worried that a brief reference won't help the audience grasp your main point.
One major type of illustration is an anecdote. Anecdotes are a little different from illustrations. Often they have more of a humorous, entertaining feel than illustrations. There are 3 different types of anecdotes: personal, third person, or a fictional story that relates to the main point. Let's look at these 3 different types of anecdotes.
Okay, assume you're delivering a persuasive speech whose specific purpose is to convince the audience that baseball is a dangerous sport and should be banned. This might be a possible personal anecdote.
By a time I remember when I was 5 years old. I went to the ball game with my dad. The grass was green. The sun was shining. All was right with the world. So my dad and I, ballpark francs in hand, took our seats in the bleachers. The game was fantastic, a pitcher's duel, but a surprise came in the bottom of the 8th. The shortstop, best hitter on the ball team, smashed a ball in our direction. The crowd went wild. The batter ran the bases and the ball rocketed towards my dad and hit him square on the forehead.
On to play in the big leagues.
Now here's an example of a third-person anecdote for a speech with the same specific purpose.
The American pastime had treated him well. Then, one balmy Sunday afternoon, John stepped up to the plate. The pitcher threw, and John hit the ball as hard as he could. Hard enough to shatter a family, you might say. John hit a home run, but beamed a father sitting in the stands. John would never hit again.
And finally, there's the anecdote in the form of a fictional story. These stories can help hold an audience's attention and illustrate your main points. Assume our last 2 anecdotes were entirely true, and listen to this fictional story framed in the same topic. Let's watch.
Casey was a baseball player, the mightiest in the land. When Casey strode up to the bat, he'd make 1,000,000 fans. He'd run, he'd throw, he'd catch, he'd slide, and all the fans would cheer. "We'll win the series," they'd all yell. "We'll win it every year." And then one day he took the bat in a most important game. 'Twas for the series of the world, the champs, his team would reign. But the pitch hit Casey on the skull, right into his head. And so the mighty Casey lay on home plate, stone cold dead.
And there you have it, the 3 kinds of anecdotes: personal, third person, and fictional. If used right, any of these can make for a better speech.
The other day I was out walking my dog, and I saw a few kids playing in the parking lot next to the grocery store. They were gathered around in a circle. At first I thought they were playing with action figures or marbles or something, but when I got closer, it dawned on me what their toys were. They were playing with glass, broken glass. They named their pieces of glass. One was named Pointy Man. One was named Infecto. The children of this town need a recreation center now more than ever.
If used correctly, illustrations can make for a more powerful, more entertaining speech.
Testimony!
Testimony is another common type of supporting material. Testimony is information or an opinion expressed by another person.
Expert testimony is the most common type of testimony used in speeches. Expert testimony makes use of the beliefs, values, opinions, and predictions of some authority or expert in order to support a speech's major point.
Expert testimony is most useful when delivering persuasive speeches. In an audience's eyes, predictions or opinions of experts that are in line with your own often make a speech seem more credible. One easy and effective way to express an expert's opinion is by using a direct quotation.
In her recent book, Small Hands, Big Hearts, local child psychologist Dr. Suzanne Ibid writes, "Children have a right to a safe haven. Just having a place to escape outside of their own imaginations can make all the difference in a child's social adjustment."
A direct quotation is the statement of another person's opinion or conclusion using that person's exact words. If the quotation seems too complex, it can also be paraphrased. But regardless of the circumstances, a quotation should always be credited to its source.
And that's the scoop on support materials. But the preparation doesn't stop there. All these support materials won't do your presentation or speech a lick of good unless they're presented in an organized fashion. That's where the next section comes in.
Section C, organizing your presentation.
The next step in the speech building process is to organize your speech into a specific pattern, because the fact is, audiences will more likely remember a speech if it presents its ideas in an organized way. Because your audience is trying to follow an oral presentation, any patterns and verbal cues you include will increase their comprehension. There are 2 important steps you can take to help organize your speech.
Number 1, identify the main ideas of the speech, and number 2, make an outline.
We'll be going over each one of these steps in detail and applying them to the informative and persuasive speech formats. So why don't we quit screwing around and get to it?
Most speeches contain between 2 and 5 main ideas. It usually works out that you can come up with a lot more main ideas than you can fit within your time constraints. That's why you have to be selective. You have to pick out only the main ideas that are essential to the speech. So if an idea doesn't help you achieve your specific purpose, it shouldn't be included in your speech.
Basically, the order of your ideas is pretty much up to you and what you might think have the most impact your audience might want. Just know that your strongest idea will be the one that will have the greatest effect on the audience. So, your strongest idea should either be at the beginning or at the end of the body of your speech. Your weaker ideas should be buried in the middle of the speech, not at either end. With that in mind, here are some common and helpful ways speakers choose to organize the main ideas in their speeches.
Chronological organization.
Chronological organization uses the passage of time to present ideas. That's a fancy way for saying you tackle things in the order they happen.
So say you're giving an informative speech whose specific purpose is to explain how to build a tree